listening to an Iraq Currency Watch podcast. Here's Marcus Curtis and Sam I Am.
Okay, welcome back. We've been having a discussion here about the dinar and why it's not going to revalue and why it is a scam. And we've been talking about currency values, what a revalue is, what a redenomination is, what a devaluation is, the difference between a pegged currency and a floating currency. We've covered a lot of bases today. Sam, do you have any final points that you want to bring up?
Well, it's just that the gurus have been misrepresenting a lot of things, and I could have included a lot of other things that you'll hear frequently in these conference calls that are baseless, they're lies. They're just saying these things to string people along. They say things like, China is pressuring Iraq to get the RV done. Or they'll say things like, everybody has signed off on it. We're just waiting for the algorithm, of the world's currencies to finally kick everything in. I mean, you hear all kinds of stuff. They've used these lines for the 5 years that I've been in the investment. Actually, almost 6 years now that I've been you've heard these things about so-and-so has to sign off on it, or this country is the holdup, or the cabal this, or whatever. But when you look at the economics of it, it isn't possible. It's just not possible when you understand what a revaluation is, when you understand how they're backing their currency, when you understand what their money supply is. You understand that it is not doable. So the pumpers know that this is not doable. I mean, the lying pumpers, okay? There are some people who are just misinformed, but most of these guys are lying. They know it's not doable, and that's why they have to resort to these conspiracy theories and the global currency reset, prosperity packages, asset-backed currencies. They have to present a new system because the current system will not support a substantial revaluation of the Iraqi dinar. So when you hear people talk about we're going over to a new system, the reset, asset-backed currencies, they're resorting to these as a way of justifying this mythical RV that is not possible.
Right, and you bring up an important point. They come up with these conspiracy theories to explain how a revalue is going to happen because of the elephant in the room. And the elephant in the room is that Iraq has 35 trillion dinar outside the banking structure. Mm-hmm. How can you revalue a currency that big to be $1 per dinar when we only have, 12 trillion in our M2 money supply? That's not possible.
Right.
So in order to avoid that, they talk about these conspiracy theories. And there's a couple of other important points. If you look at the demographics of who the dinar is marketed to, it's primarily marketed to Christian people. As a matter of fact, when I called Dinar Trade, and many people have experienced this, Dinar Trade is no longer, but when I called them to buy my dinar, they put me on hold. And what played on hold? Christian music played in the background. They did that purposely. This is why you have so many so-called preachers on these calls. This is why you have so many people who say they're prophets or that they're pastors and probably have no background. It wouldn't surprise me if half these guys never walked into a church in their life.
Yeah, you don't hear any Buddhists.
No.
You don't hear any atheists promoting them.
Right. It's obvious. And the whole hitch here, the whole thing is they're marketing it to Christians on this guise.
And why is that?
It's part of biblical prophecy.
Mm-hmm.
This is going to be part of biblical prophecy if you study biblical prophecy. Iraq is the cradle of civilization. That's where Babylon is. Babylon is in the book of Revelations, and people begin to believe this stuff. Whoa, this is going to have to revalue in order for biblical prophecy to be fulfilled. But this is what really happens. People who are Christians take their faith in the Bible and they misapply that faith to the dinar. And when the dinar doesn't do what it's supposed to do, that's going to have a direct faith on their belief in God, even though the dinar has nothing to do with their belief in God, because they misapplied their faith. They put it in a place of what they believed was an interpretation of biblical prophecy, but in reality, the dinar has nothing to do with the Bible or biblical prophecy.
Now, doesn't it say in the book of Revelation a day's wages for a loaf of bread?
Yes, it does.
Or something like that. So following that investing principle...
Well, it says a penny, but back then a penny was a day's wages.
Right.
Right.
For a loaf of bread.
Right.
So if you take that as something to base an investment on, you would say, well, let's invest in grain. Let's invest, in Baird's bread or whatever bread manufacturer, or grain manufacturer, or a farming company. So it's just a bad idea. I mean, the streets of heaven are paved with gold, so let's invest in gold. That's silly. That is not a solid investment strategy, taking Bible prophecy or biblical references as some measure of the worth of an investment.
Right. Now, the Bible does have some important things to say about money, which is interesting to me.
Yeah, sure.
It says the love of money is the root of all evil. It's that love of money that the gurus have, which is the root of all their deception. So you could see that the Bible does have it. It says if you love money, you're not going to be satisfied with what you got, and when you get increased, you're not going to be satisfied with that.
And it's also greed that motivates a lot of people to try to invest in a get-rich-quick scheme.
That's right.
So it's not just the gurus and the pumpers that are greedy. It's also people who think they can get rich overnight, which I was guilty of. I admit. But if you read what the Bible says about money, the way to prosperity, according to the Bible, is diligence, hard work,
through labor,
educating yourself, developing a skill. Get rich quick schemes are not supported by Scripture.
Not only that, the Bible talks about get rich quick schemes and says that anything you get from that is going to be gone to the wind. Look how many lottery winners lost everything.
And then the Apostle Paul says, they who would be rich have pierced themselves through with many sorrows.
Many sorrows, that's right. So the Bible does say a lot about money, and you really need to see what the Bible says about money and stop looking at this misinterpretation of biblical prophecy from people who claim to be pastors but really are not pastors at all. So you have all these wild numbers out there, 35 trillion dinar outside of the banks. What's it? I forget what it is now, but back in the day it was like 89 trillion was their M2. I think it's a lot lower now. But all these wild numbers, and there's no way it can rationally work. And so as Christians are beginning to figure this out, they come up with something else called the global currency reset. And the thing is that these gurus didn't make this up. They borrowed this conspiracy theory from gold and silver people. And it's interesting, if you turn on a television set and you can watch National Geographic and take a look at all the preppers that are out there. 80% of people...
Now, let me just interject. What is a prepper?
A prepper is somebody who believes the end of the world is coming, and they're preparing to survive the end of the world by gathering guns, ammo, getting some kind of compound.
Survivalist, patriot.
Removing themselves from the grid, stockpiling food. These guys are preppers.
Right.
Now, National Geographic did a show on this. And from what I could tell from every episode I've seen, 75 to 80% of these people believe that the thing that's going to end the world is an economic crisis. And these days, you can't get very far before you turn on the radio and you hear about the coming crash of the dollar. And so what these gurus have is they borrowed all this stuff from the global currency reset, and they started preaching this stuff on their conference calls because it gives the dinar a little bit more life and validity, and it can milk this cow a little longer.
As long as I have been paying attention, I've heard about the looming crash of the dollar for 30 years. Right. And if you look at the charts over the past couple of years, the dollar is what everybody's running to.
Well, the 2008 meltdown, everybody thought, okay, here it's going to come. Here's the crash of the dollar. Finally, it's here. And that's when gold, if you remember, started to shoot up. And in 2012, gold got to what was, I think it was $1,889 an ounce. So people were buying these ounce coins, and it was some incredible high amount. Well, the dollar started to recover. And the reason why the dollar started to recover is because there's not a whole lot of choice out there. The euro was going through its crisis as well, with Ireland and the Pigs Nation, which is what's Portugal? What is it, Portugal?
Portugal, Ireland,
Greece, Italy, and Spain.
Was it Italy too?
Mm-hmm.
PIIGS.
Yeah, Ireland was added after the European sovereign debt crisis.
Okay.
So
there was one I at first.
It used to be Italy, then Ireland was added later.
Okay, so it was PIGS and then it's PIIGS.
Right. And so this has really dragged down the euro, and you have the Asian market suffering as a result, and so there's really not a whole lot of choice with the dollar. And in 2014, remember we shared this article where the dollar had its best year yet since 2005, before the global economic meltdown ever happened. But after the economic meltdown, that's when this conspiracy theory really took root, and it took off. But the dollar went through a little bit of a recovery, and it's still recovering. Now, our debt has grown, and we have a president that's out of control, and we have a $19 trillion debt now. But the dollar is still should have crashed a long time ago. I mean, fiat currencies, you hear this all the time, fiat currencies have a lifespan of 30 years. And we were fiat currency since we left the gold standard in 1971. And this is the root of their argument. Well, it's 2016 today, so you're looking at about 45 years that this currency has been around. Our current system has been in play since we left the gold standard. And so they say that the dollar is a fiat currency. Well, is the dollar a fiat currency? And what does fiat mean? What they'll tell you, the definition of fiat is no intrinsic value. In other words, the value is predetermined, either by a peg rate or a floating rate, whatever. But it's a determined value. There's no intrinsic value. There's no commodity or asset that's backing that currency, which is an outright lie, because there is 8,133 tons of gold that backs the dollar. It's gold for the purpose of currency backing. Now, you can't walk into a bank and bring $1,000 and say, okay, I want the equivalent of gold to this. You can't do that. But the Federal Reserve has a bunch of gold bars, and they're stockpiled, and they have more than any other nation. The next in line is Germany with over 2,000 tons of gold, and the next in line after that is the International Monetary Fund. So to say that the dollar's not backed by anything is not really true. And then they set up the PetroDollar system. And in the PetroDollar system, in 1973, basically, they went to Saudi Arabia and they said, okay, this is what we're going to do for you, Saudi Arabia. You sell the oil in dollars only. You do that, and we will do a few things for you. We will come to your defense. You will have the American army defending you, and we'll go to war on your behalf should you ever be attacked. Plus, you're going to be rich. You're going to have great wealth, and money's just going to flow to your nation. So they promised them those two things, and they set up this petrodollar system with OPEC, where oil is only sold in dollars. So all of a sudden, you're China or you're Japan, and you need oil because it's not a natural resource in your country. Now all of a sudden, you need dollars to buy that oil. What are you going to do? Well, you can exchange your yen for American dollars and go buy your oil, or you can build the Americans a Datsun, a Nissan, a Honda, a Nintendo, a PlayStation, and you can import that into America, take the taxes off of that, and then go buy your oil. And what the petrodollar succeeded in doing is globalizing the world. Now, it started in 1945 under the IMF, the International Monetary Fund, and the Marshall Plan. That started the globalization, but the petrodollar was one of those things that solidified it and made it go even more, because now you have manufacturing nations going overseas. Now China, well, not China so much, but Japan is bringing in imports in the 70s, and then other corporations like textile industries are going to Taiwan and these other places, because these countries need the dollar to buy the oil. And so you had a mass exodus of manufacturing going overseas due to this petrodollar system. And the dollar has become so ingrained that it's not just a reserve currency. It's a petrodollar. There's nations that trade with the dollar exclusively. They don't have their own currency. Bahama, Panama, Ecuador, Zimbabwe. There's 9 or 10 countries I've counted that they don't have their own currency. They only use the dollar. Then you have countries like Iraq that have the dinar in circulation, but they also have the dollar as well. And what this does to the dinar by having the dollar in circulation, by the way, is it provides stability for the dinar. Because if the dinar was just there by itself, it would probably collapse. So there's a lot of countries around the world that have dual currencies in circulation. They have the dollar along with their currency unit in circulation. So you not just have nations using this, you have people from all over the world using the dollar. So for it to have an overnight crash, you're talking about a whole economic structure.
Now, when you're talking about the petrodollar, you're not talking about a different currency.
Right.
It's the U.S. dollar. It's just describing how that dollar is used.
Right.
But when we say petrodollar, we're not talking about a different dollar from the U.S. dollar. It's the U.S. dollar. It's just how it's applied in the oil industry in OPEC.
Right. We're talking about an exclusive system of exchange.
Right.
Is what we're talking about. We're not talking about a currency unit.
Yeah, because when I first heard the term petrodollar, I thought it was different from the U.S. dollar. I thought it was something different that was printed. And I had that misconception.
Right.
And so if there's anybody out there who hears petrodollar for the first time, just, understand that we're talking about the U.S. dollar, only how it is applied for purchasing oil.
Now, it was important to note that before we went to war with Iraq, Saddam was under sanctions, and he changed from selling oil in dollars to selling oil in euros. Yeah. And after that, we started making invasion plans. And the first order of business was to switch it back to that dollar. You think the United States is going to crash because people don't want their currency anymore? As long as oil is being used to as an exchange with the dollar, as long as people around the world, citizens, are using the dollar, and as long as that dollar that's in circulation around the world and in reserves, I don't see a collapse.
Don't go away. We'll be right back. The Word of Faith movement has impacted Christianity like few movements in the history of the church, and yet it is one of the most misunderstood and misrepresented movements as well. To help people learn more about the truth of Word of Faith teaching, Rod Saunders has written an exhaustive book on the subject entitled Defending the Faith, Word of Faith Apologetics. Based on his extensive history in the movement and over 30 years of research, Defending the Faith addresses many of the misconceptions that people have concerning things like confession, physical healing, the atonement, and financial prosperity. Now available at Amazon.com's Kindle publications, Defending the Faith takes on the often misleading rhetoric and assertions of opponents of the faith message with a balanced scriptural approach to these subjects and more. Don't be misled. Get the other side of the story from someone who's been there. Defending the Faith. Available today at Amazon and your favorite ebook retailers. Have you ever tried to learn about basic economics only to get bogged down with complex math and advanced equations? This can be frustrating. Learning basic economics should not be this hard. Head on over to the site called Biblical Views in World Economics, or BVAWE, and learn about basic global economics. Start off learning about monetary history. Then learn about various monetary systems that have been in place, such as Bretton Woods and the classic gold standard. Learn about basic money mechanics. What causes inflation? How is the global money supply expanded and contracted? What is fractional reserve banking? All of these topics and more are answered with easy-to-understand basic layman's terms. This site is brought to you by the same person who brought you Iraq Currency Watch. The Biblical View section covers modern Christian traditions that are not found in Scripture. It covers areas where the Bible has been taken out of context by the modern church. It provides arguments against subjects like tithing and the prosperity gospel. This site is more about the function of money than it is about Christianity. There are some principles that Christians believe about money that actually have no scriptural basis whatsoever. So check out Biblical Views in World Economics today and learn how money really works.
The Apostle Paul said, "For I am not ashamed of the gospel of Christ, for it is the power of God to salvation for everyone who believes, for the Jew first, and also for the Greek." Are you a Christian who needs help in sharing the gospel? Do you need access to information on subjects like evolution and creationism, Calvinism, or glossolalia? Do you need a better grasp of the fundamentals of the Christian faith? The Apostle Peter tells us that we should always be prepared to give an answer to those who ask us for the reason for the hope that we have. As believers, we not only need to know what we believe, but why we believe what we believe. JewGreekcom is a fresh, innovative Bible apologetics site providing Bible study resources and information on philosophies, religions, denominations, and cults, along with commentary on current doctrinal issues. That's www.JewGreekcom. Log on today to better equip yourself to provide a defense for your faith.
Don't go away. We'll be right back.
If you listen to radio or watch TV, you may have heard commercials that started like this.
We predicted the 2008 meltdown.
Or they may add,
We predicted the housing bubble in 2008 and the dot-com bubble.
these statements are designed to make you think that the people represented in the advertisement are financial experts. The commercial may claim that the advertiser has successfully navigated through a series of bad economic events and brought wealth to many people. The next statement is typically something like this,
The Federal Reserve is printing too much money.
which is followed by,
A collapse of the dollar is coming.
sometimes this can be followed by,
This collapse will make the Great Depression look like a recession.
and the next statements are typically,
How will you prepare for this financial collapse? How prepared are you for the collapse of the dollar?
and now the sales pitch begins.
Not only can you avoid the pitfalls of the coming economic collapse, but you can actually profit from it.
And from here, the product is pitched. And sometimes they offer you a free guide. This is so they can get your mailing address or email address. And once they have those things, you are bombarded with even more propaganda. The conspiracy theory used to sell these products states that there will be a global currency reset. The dollar will crash overnight and it will be immediately replaced. Is there any truth to this?
Read the book by Marcus Curtis called The Truth About the Coming Global Currency Reset and get the facts behind the hype. It is available on Amazon, Smashwords, and other ebook retailers. Learn the truth behind the global currency reset and put your fears to rest. You're listening to an Iraq Currency Watch podcast. Here's Marcus Curtis and Sam I Am.
Well, let me just ask you, if we're not going to an asset-backed system, if there's not going to be this global currency reset that we're hearing about, then what is the future of currency?
Currency is becoming digital. The new system is going to be digital. And a new system can be found in the book of Revelations, chapter 13, and the last verse. It says he's going to put a mark in your right hand or in your forehead, and that you can't buy or sell unless you have this mark. And this is already here. You have these IR infrared readers now. And they're going to chip you. They already have the chips. They already have the technology. And it was the dollar that brought about the globalization of the economy. It was the dollar that brought about this chip. And there doesn't need to be a global currency reset to bring about the mark of the beast. And that's what the big lie is. Everybody thinks the dollar has to go away, and then the mark of the beast is going to rise. I'm talking about within the Christian community here. And this is how they've been duped. They think that the global currency reset is a prelude to the mark of the beast. No, 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 no. That's not true. The mark of the beast is already here. They already have the technology in place. They're already doing it in Europe.
It's just a matter of conditioning the people to accept
Right.
it.
The more they get people off of digital currency, on digital currency, and off of the paper currency, the closer they are. This is why they have the debit cards and the credit cards, and this is why they have the structuring laws, and this is why all this stuff is in place. It's to get you to stop using physical cash and to get you to start using digital currency. That's going to be the new system coming, not some kind of gold system or an old system. That's like saying that the dinar is going to go back to its pre-war value. We know how much BS that is. That's not going to happen any more than gold's going to be used as a new asset to back currency.
We're not going to go back to manual typewriters and VCRs.
Right, exactly. Exactly. We've been slowly migrating away from gold since the Federal Reserve in 1913. It's been a slow process. And when the Great Depression hit, those people who floated their currencies were the first to recover, like England. And then they had the gold confiscation in the 1930s, and then they set up the Bretton Woods system after World War II, which was basically America had gold, and then other people had America's dollar, and other countries had America's dollar, and their dollar in an offhanded way was backed by gold because they had U.S. dollars that were backed by gold. And when Nixon removes us from the gold standard, that ended all of that. But by that time, all these nations went through the Marshall Plan and they had reserves built up. And this is the key. I mean, if you look at BRICS, BRICS represents a group of nations that have 18% of the emerging economy today. That's BRICS is Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. Okay, they have 4 trillion U.S. dollars to back their currency with. If the U.S. dollar crashes overnight, like the global currency reset people say,
What happens to them?
what happens to all that currency that's backed by the U.S. dollar? It becomes worthless. Absolutely worthless.
Right.
And the number one backing of the dinar is the U.S. dollar. If the U.S. dollar crashes, the dinar becomes worthless, and that's just the way it works.
Yeah, these people who are talking about, well, they've got the dinar in case the dollar crashes. That makes no sense.
Right.
The dinar's backed by the dollar.
Right. The dinar
Are not backed by the dollar, but
It
in their
is.
foreign currency reserves.
It's backed by the dollar. Yeah.
Yeah, in essence. I mean, they've got other currencies and they've got some gold too, but they're in big trouble if the dollar crashes.
Yeah. So there's not going to be an overnight crash.
But it's pegged to the dollar. That's what I wanted to say. It's pegged to the dollar. So the dollar goes down, the dinar goes down. That makes no sense. Then you've got people out there saying, "Yeah, well, we're gonna go back to asset-backed currencies, and there is enough gold to support an asset." No. What about the Dragon family?
Oh, that's a conspiracy
The
theory.
Dragon family's got all this gold that we don't know about, Marcus, and they're going to use that secret gold for prosperity packages, for, all of these humanitarian causes. You've heard this.
I've heard this, but I don't put much stock into it because this is coming from the same group of people that say we never went to the moon. So I don't think that...
Well, there's this one guru that is pushing this Dragon family theory, who has a history of following UFOs.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the paranormal. He's really into a lot of new age paranormal stuff, and this, when you start resorting to that to justify your investment, you're in trouble.
Well, to be fair, Nasera, the background of Nasera, they follow that stuff too. They think people from outer space are watching us, and as soon as this global currency goes into effect, people are going to show up with their UFOs. Aliens are going to show up and introduce themselves.
Right. Yeah, I remember Warren Buffett talking about that.
Yeah. This is crazy. I mean, so, and it's important to put things in perspective. I am not saying that the dollar will never be replaced as a reserve currency. I'm not saying that at all. And China has a seat at the table now. But you're going to need American dollars simply because America does $1.5 trillion in trade every year. You're going to need U.S. dollars to trade with us, even if you don't need them to trade with anybody else. And we have a lot of major exports, and doing something, being second place with about 1/10 of 300 million people as opposed to 2 billion now, or
In China?
in China. Yeah.
Last I heard it was 1.3 billion.
1.3 compared to 318 million. I'm rough numbers. I don't know exact numbers, but with that portion of the population, we're not doing too bad, and we're conducting $1.5 trillion in trade every year, and we don't trade in anything else but the dollar. So if you're going to remove the dollar from the globe, how are you going to get our stuff?
Good question.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. I'm not saying that that the dollar can never be replaced. I'm not saying that. But what I am saying is that the dollar is not going to crash overnight. There's no overnight crash of the dollar. It just can't without everybody around the world losing.
Right.
And it affects everybody. It's too connected. If we go down, China
A crash of the dollar would be a crash of the global economic system.
We've seen this with China last year. Crash of China is a crash. It's too connected. Now, it doesn't mean that the dollar won't be replaced over time. They can say, well, we're coming up with a new type of currency that's going to be a reserve currency, and over time this can happen. But you got a lot of dollars to replace. It's going to take a while.
Yeah, and you're not
Years.
saying that you shouldn't buy gold.
I'm not saying I have gold. I have silver.
Right.
But I don't believe that they're going to go up 1,000% overnight simply because there's a common global currency reset. You have to buy gold and silver for the right reasons.
And what is that?
Well, they're assets. You know, you have them and they're assets, and you have them as a means of trade, or you have jewelry even. I mean, I have gold jewelry that I weigh an ounce and see how many ounces that adds up to.
Yeah, just don't buy gold thinking that it's going to shoot up
Right.
to thousands of dollars an ounce
Right.
overnight because the dollar has crashed.
Right.
That's speculation, and that's not sound investing. What you should have is just a hedge against inflation. Probably less than 10% of your portfolio.
Probably, yeah. You have about 10% in precious metals, and it's okay to have precious metals. There's some people who don't have them at all, but the hype in precious metals, and the reason why they're going up right now, is due to the fact that there's a lot of scare about a coming crash out there, and people are buying precious metals to hedge their bet. And that scare is out there because of the gold and silver people, pretty much.
Yeah. So if you hear people on these calls talking about the global crash, the Dragon family, the cabal, chances are you're listening to somebody who is pumping something without any evidence, anything solid backing it. They may sound very convincing. They may sound very sincere, but the facts don't justify this panic, this fear-mongering that you're hearing from people who present these conspiracy theories and economic doom scenarios.
Right. We're going to wrap this up, but before we do, we're going to talk about a new forum that Sam and I just joined called Dinar Daily. And what I like about Dinar Daily is that you can speak your mind there without being blacklisted. You can actually speak your piece without fear of recourse. Sam knows more about the history of Dinar Daily. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Apparently at one time it was the home of Okie Oil Man, and eventually they tired of Okie's shenanigans, and he went elsewhere. And over time, Dinar Daily has slowly come to see the light that this is basically a scam promoted by people who are telling a lot of lies. And they kind of went through the same epiphany that you and I went through.
Yes,
and today, rather than being the home of Okie Oil Man, they're the home of the Guru Busters.
Yeah, Guru Hunters.
The Guru Hunters, I'm sorry.
Yeah, because they want their head on a plate.
And they're doing a lot of good work uncovering the lies and the backgrounds of some of these people. The kind of thing that I used to do when I had my blog. I'm thoroughly supportive of everything that they're doing there. I don't have the time to invest into the research that I used to do on this, but I understand what they're doing, and I say go for it, guys.
Yeah, I say so too. So it's I'm on their posting, and Sam is on their posting, and so if you want to have a conversation with us, just become a member of Dinar Daily.
DinarDaily.net.
.net, yeah. Head on over and become a member, and let's start a conversation. And we'll see you in the next Iraq Currency Watch podcast.
This is a production of Iraq Currency Watch. Any views expressed by guests of this show may not reflect the views of Iraq Currency Watch or the host. The views expressed by the host are opinions reached after countless hours of research and years of exposure to the Dinar community. We ask that everyone do their own research regarding any investment, including the Dinar. Thank you for listening to this podcast from Iraq Currency Watch.